So what happens when you have pomegranates that are past your eat-by date? Well, you take the seeds out and plant seeds, of course. Hi, I'm Elise. I'm glad you stopped by. I've got a couple of little pomegranates here I rescued from going into a trash bin, and they are past the sell-by date, or past the eat-by date. But I'm going to cut them open, extract the seeds, plant the seeds, and grow out some pomegranate plants. Very easy. There are numerous ways to cut up pomegranates. What I would suggest is you try 2 or 3 different versions and see what you like best. Just a little bit about the pomegranate. This is Punica granatum, or medieval Latin seeded apple. Neat. It's from the Mediterranean. It's about 500 cultivars, and the good thing about it, you can grow it all the way up to zone 7. It's a fruit-bearing, deciduous tree. It can get 15 to 30 feet tall. It likes sun. It grows in tropical, subtropical, and some warm temperate areas. You can put it in pots and overwinter it if it's too cold for you. And it comes in a dwarf size. Now, one thing, make sure that if you are buying plants that you verify it is a fruit-bearing plant, because there are some that are ornamental only. I got one year that way, and it was only ornamental. Now, it can be sweet or it can be sour. And in fact, they use some of those smaller varieties as bonsai. Historically, it has been used for tannins, curing leather, flowers. I mean, there's loads of uses. Rich, rich history on pomegranates. Lots of folklore. So let's cut one open. Again, various ways to cut them open. This is the method I'm using right now. That doesn't mean it's the method I will always use. Move my little scrap bowl. I have a bowl of water for the seeds. I just cut a flat piece off. And then I'm going to make a plug in it. Kind of like if you've ever eaten citrus, when you plug the citrus so you can suck the juice out. That's all. Just make a little plug. That opens it up some. You know, you have to have a lot of pomegranates to get any amount of juice. And then just go down the edges. And you'll see there's distinct ridges. And that's where you can cut down, or just cut down wherever you can. Now, see, I hit a couple of really soft spots there, and the knife just decided to do whatever it wanted to do. Disclaimer, this is a knife, folks. Knives are sharp. Knives can cut you. Okay. And then just pop it open. Look at that. How pretty. I am going to taste one, even though it looks a little cruddy. That is good. And this is a sweet variety. Now, this is the little seed. And so that's what I'm after. This little bitty white seed. If you were going to juice this, you could put it in your blender. You could squish it up against the side of a container. You can put it in a baggie and mash them down. Because what you have to do, if you're doing it for juice, is you have to pop this outer membrane, and that's where your juice is. Looks like little jewels, doesn't it? So you want to pop it. So somehow you have to get that all popped. Sometimes you can just lay it down and squash. Can you hear it? And then when you get them all squashed, put them in a strainer, put them in a bowl of water, let them sit for a little while. So it's up to you. Now, I'm not saving these to eat, and I am not saving them for juice because it does have some bad spots on it. But I am just going to take all the seeds out. See, look rotten. Don't want to eat that. There's a story about pomegranates. Pomegranates gave us our 4 seasons. Very ancient story, and there's different versions of it, but basically Demeter, or Demeter, the goddess of the fields of the harvest, had a beautiful daughter named Persephone, who was also a goddess of growth and vegetation and things like that. Well, one day, Persephone was out in the fields, and the god of the underworld came by and saw her and decided that he wanted her for his wife. So he kidnapped her, took her down to the underworld. Demeter was so upset and so unhappy and so forlorn that she lost her beautiful daughter. She quit doing her job. The fields died. Nothing grew. The people starved. So the head god said, well, we can't have this. So he went down to see what was going on. And he said, well, if Persephone hasn't, those are really rotten. I'm just going to throw that whole thing away. If Persephone hadn't eaten anything, she could return home. Well, the god of the underworld had tricked her, and she had eaten like 3 pomegranate seeds. So the main god said, fine, what will happen is she can spend 6 months with underground and 6 months above. So the 6 months that she is underground is fall and winter, when nothing grows. The land is barren. The 6 months that she's above the surface is spring and summer. That's when everything blooms, everything springs forth, life is renewed. Isn't that a neat story? Now, there's many versions of that. In fact, there are loads of stories about pomegranates. Because pomegranates were so important. Vital food source. Used a lot in decorating the symbols. Used a lot in religious ceremonies. Really neat. You might want to spend some time. Okay, so I've got to now go through and squash all of these somehow. It's up to you how you do it. If you're trying to save juice, you're going to do it a little different. I just want it for the seeds, as you saw. Some of this was rotten. So I can go through and just mash. All I want to do is break that membrane. That membrane is called a sarcotesta. This one actually did have a lot of juice in it. Maybe it was because it was so overripe. And if you put them in a baggie, you don't have to worry about the juice splattering around. Sometimes it can stain a little bit. And in fact, in some areas, it's used for dye. So that's all I'm going to do right now. I'm going to put this in a bowl of water. And that's going to help soak off this membrane. And then I'll go ahead and finish cleaning them. And we'll go plant some seeds. I finished cleaning my pomegranate seeds. Nice, pretty. A good size. They're light colored so you can see when you plant them. There are numerous ways to take the seeds out of your pomegranate and clean them. And just to run over a few. Once you cut your pomegranate up, like I showed before, or any way you want to cut it up, pop the seeds out. You can actually stand there and pop the seeds with your hand, that fleshy membrane around the seed, if that's what you want to do. You can put them in a Ziploc bag and squish them. That will save your flesh and your juice for you. You can put them in the blender. You can put them in a fine mesh screen and rub the seed up against the side of the fine mesh screen, and that will separate the flesh from the seed. You can put them in a jar, let them soak, and then agitate them really hard. Lots of ways to do it. Bottom line, you need to separate your seed from the flesh, which is what I did. I soaked mine overnight, and then I made sure that they were popped as much as possible by just going in with my hand and popping them. I drained them. I put an old towel down on the counter. I dumped the seeds, still with lots of the pomegranate flesh around them, on that towel. I rolled the towel up, and then, like a rolling pin, and it scraped all of the flesh off the seeds for me. Neat. Then you just wash your towel off and you can reuse it. I went ahead and I washed my seeds again. I laid them out and let them dry. Now, if I was going to plant immediately, I wouldn't have to let them dry completely. But I'm also going to store some of these, so I wanted to make sure they were really dry. You always want your seeds really, really dry to store them. Now, pomegranates can grow up to zone 8. They've been seen in zone 7. I've even read articles that they can grow in zone 6. I do not know. You would have to have a winter protection, I would think. They are deciduous, and I am just kind of doing a rough sow by just dropping them around. And like I said, since they're light colored, they're easy to see, and that's nice. If you've ever tried to drop in little bitty dark seeds the same color as your soil, sometimes it's really hard to know where you got your seeds. All right, that's it. I've got my label. I'm going to come back and just lightly cover these. This soil is a little moist. We'll mist it just a little bit more, and I'm going to put this in my hothouse. I would really like for it to go ahead and germinate and start working on the root system. Now, this isn't all my seeds. The rest of the seeds that are clean and dry, I'm going to put in a brown paper bag and put them in the bottom of my refrigerator. They don't really need to be stratified, but they'll hold their viability much better if they're in a cool area. But I also know people who just put them in sacks and put them in with the rest of their seeds. So it's up to you. You could maybe put a few in the fridge and a few in a sack and see what works when it's time to plant them out. The seeded apple, a nickname for pomegranate. That's it. I'm going to go get a little soil. I've reused a plastic container. I really like using these little plastic containers. Just make sure you have lots of drainage holes. Now when I put my soil in and I mist it a little bit, if I can see any of the pomegranate seeds, I'll either put more soil on or go ahead and just mash them down. That's it. And hopefully by next spring I'll have some nice little seedlings. Just remember, do what you can do with what you have when you can do it. Gardening is an experiment. Well, today it's potting up pomegranates, the seeded apple. I actually have a couple of containers of pomegranates that I need to pot up. And I have so many because I was requested to go ahead and plant quite a few, and I did. So the other pot I probably won't be up potting. I'll just give them to the people who requested. So I'm just going to take my finger and go in here. This is really wet soil, probably a little wetter than I would have liked. So let's see what the root system looks like. Nice little root system. Pomegranates have a wiry root system, and the whole plant is a little wiry. It's not that nice, soft, herbaceous plant. It's like a Mediterranean plant, but it handles the heat very, very well. And I just have some little pots ready, slightly moist, all-purpose potting soil. For right now, I'm just going to go through and lay all the ones in the top, and I'm just picking out some of the big ones for right now. If you can keep the soil around the roots, that's fine. If not, that's fine. Either way. And I actually have a couple of little volunteer tomatoes, probably where the birds drop the seeds in for me. Now, if you've got lots of these pomegranate seedlings, you can put 2 to a container, even when they're this young. And what will happen is you'll get this nice, thick, bushy plant. So I might do that. Since I have so many, I will put 2 to a container. And I'll just spread them out a little bit. I really like pomegranates. I like pomegranate juice. I like to kind of notch away on the little seeds. And I've made other videos about pomegranates. Look at the size of that root system. I think they might have stayed in here just a wee bit too long. All right, Let me move that over and come back here. Now, I am going to put 2 per container, and I will spread them out just a little bit, just using my finger. You can use whatever you want. Put one kind of on that side of the pot. Put one on this side of the pot. This will give me a nice full pot of seedling. Now, when they outgrow this, when the roots start coming out the bottom, or they look like they are too big for this little pot, I can up-pot them. Hopefully, take the whole thing out at one time and save the 2 at a time to plant up into a larger size pot. That's my goal. And I've done it before, and it works. But planting 2 of these per container will save containers, saves soil, saves time, and gives you that nice, full seedling look. When they get older and you have to go up to larger pots, or if you're going to put them in the ground, if you wanted to separate them at that time, you could. I'm just going to leave mine together though. It's not going to hurt them. More soil in here. Everything's a little messy. Everything's just a little damp, just enough to stick. But that's good. It's a good time to transplant your plants when they're a little moist and it's not too terribly hot. Doesn't take long at all. Now these will go into bright, indirect light, no full sun, even though they are considered a Mediterranean plant, no full sun until the little seedlings get over their stress. So what I will probably do is come back, set up my little plant spa, if you watch the video on that, and give them a nice little relaxing bath of Epsom salts, about a tablespoon per gallon of water, and that will help with the transplant shock. These can be grown in zones 7 through 10, so they're very hardy, they're very sturdy. Uh-oh, another little tomato seedling. I love it when the animals gift me little volunteers like that. Just kind of straighten them up. Okay, that's how easy it is. Now don't forget your labels, and I'll finish the rest off camera. But don't forget your labels. Now, if you know what the pomegranate looks like, fine. But if you aren't familiar with the plant, make sure you label it. Now, I'm going to go and try and find one of the carry flats that all of these will fit in, all my little pots will fit in. And that way, I keep them all together. And they'll stay in here for a little while, like I said, until either the roots start growing out the bottom or they get too big on the top. Now I am going to come back and go ahead and top dress all of these a little bit more, up a little bit higher. Almost to the top of the container. Because you know, when you water, all that soil is going to settle down a little bit. And this way, I have enough soil in it. Pretty little seedlings though, they'll do fine. The really small ones, since I have so many, I might not pot them up. I may give them a look at that root. I may give them a little more time to grow. Wow, really pretty though, aren't they? That's not sound effects, folks. Those are birds. Every afternoon. Which is fine with me. I enjoy hearing the birds. I wake up in the morning to the birds singing. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pots. I will probably do 4 or 5 more with 2 plants each. That's going to take the majority of my plants. And I'm going to stick the little volunteer tomato seedlings in a pot. It doesn't hurt. Sometimes those little volunteer seedlings are stronger than the ones you grow from seed. The seeded apple, pomegranate, wonderful plant. I hope this is something that you can grow in your landscape. Till we speak again, have a fantastic day.